So, it's been 6 weeks since I got my hands on the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, and just like every other smartphone review, I swapped my SIM card from my previous device, which was the Moto Z2 Play, and if you haven't watched that review, you can check it out right over here. But yeah, I swapped the SIM card from that device to the Note 8 and tested it out thoroughly to see what sort of an improvement does it bring to the table when compared to the Galaxy S8 Plus, which fortunately I was also able to review. So I'll be talking about the design, the screen, S Pen, Bixby. Yes, I will be talking about Bixby, the cameras, software experience, performance, and battery life. So feel free to grab a cup of coffee and enjoy the rest of the video. But first, a quick message from our sponsor.
Creativity is fueled by the best instruments. It doesn't always come easy, and in the process you often realize how important quality is. The RD400 by OCZ gives you quality and speed with M.2 interface, Toshiba NAND flash, and a PCI bracket, making it possible to focus on what matters. Invest in storage that makes a difference with a 5-year advanced warranty.
Let's be honest here for a second. Samsung grabbed everyone's attention when they announced the Galaxy S8 and the S8 Plus. It was a revolutionary step in modern smartphone engineering. In fact, the competition started to catch up with that design language. A good example of that would be the new iPhone X, or the iPhone X. Anyways, the Note 8 shares a similar DNA from its younger siblings, and that's not a bad thing. In fact, we all knew it was going to resemble the S8 Plus in some way, and it kind of is, except for that slightly sharper edges, which by the way enhances the grip a little bit over the S8 Plus. The front and the back are covered in Gorilla Glass 5, and you know what? I'm tired of complaining about glass backs on smartphones these days because it is an annoying factor to consider, especially when you're purchasing a smartphone, and it really questions the durability, especially since, it's so much prone to cracks, and of course it picks up grease and smudges. It really is annoying, but I guess a quick fix to this would be to pick up a skin or a case for added protection, but that again is another investment on top of the $1,000 price tag for this device. Now, there isn't a lot to talk about the display on the Note 8. It resembles the exact same screen-to-body ratio as the Galaxy S8 Plus with that edge-to-edge design. It spans at 6.3 inches, which is just 0.1 inches bigger than the S8 Plus, so I didn't notice a significant difference while using this device. It's got the same 2960 by 1440 resolution, AMOLED technology that produces colors that are super vibrant with deeper blacks, but I prefer something a bit more natural, like what IPS LCD panels offer, like something found on the LG G6. Although, just like the S8 and the S8 Plus, Samsung does include options for different color profiles. I ended up choosing the basic mode, so the end user does have some control as to how they'd like to view content. Speaking of watching content, I really enjoyed my time with the Note 8, watching YouTube videos and catching up on a few TV shows on Netflix. Do note that native 16:9 videos exhibit these black bars around the edges, which might be concerning for some of you out there, but given the fantastic black levels produced by the AMOLED panel, you won't notice it in darker environments. It's seriously pitch black. Samsung has implemented a crop to fit feature that pops up every time when you start watching a video in full screen mode. This essentially crops the video in order to fit the entire screen, which then eliminates the black bars. But the problem is that it crops the video, which cuts the detail at the top and the bottom, so I would recommend staying away from this feature. However, native 21:9 content spans across the entire screen automatically, and it's seriously breathtaking to watch videos in that format. And you know what? It's actually not that different from the Galaxy S8 and the S8 Plus. Both of those phones resemble the exact same features that I just mentioned, so if you own either of those devices, it's a similar experience. With every purchase of the Note 8, the user receives a pair of headphones tuned by AKG. It also comes with 3 months of Google Play Music, so that's pretty awesome. Let's talk about S Pen, because it's what defines the Note 8 from the rest of the Galaxy phones. When you date back to the original Note smartphone, the S Pen was Samsung's key selling feature, and people loved it. It's a great tool to enhance productivity if you're someone who's constantly working on the go. Sure, a laptop or tablet can get the job done, but if you physically need to interact with confidential e-documents and in some cases sign them, this guy can definitely come in handy. Samsung has preloaded some awesome tools that users can take advantage of when they start using the S Pen. For instance, when you pull out the pen when the phone is idle, you can quickly jot down anything you'd like, whether that's your grocery list, to-do lists, etc. And when you insert the pen back, it saves the memo to the Notes app and the phone turns off automatically. You can also take a screenshot and start writing on it immediately if you want to emphasize things and quickly share it to anyone. I've used this a lot while communicating with team members. There's a Smart Select tool that allows you to select a certain portion of an image and extract the text from that image, which I thought was pretty awesome. And I've used it a few times to extract tracking numbers because I receive a lot of packages here in the studio. If you want to get a little creative with messaging, there is a live message feature that can be used to create animated texts, which then saves as a GIF or GIF. Anyways, the Translate tool basically translates words, phrases, or sentences between English and other languages, which are limited by the way. All you have to do is just hover the S Pen around the text and it'll work its magic just fine. I can see myself using this feature while traveling, so that's pretty awesome. You can also add shortcuts to apps and customize it the way you like, and I think these are some of the things that you'll be missing with the Galaxy S8 and the S8 Plus, or even any other smartphone. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on the S Pen and the features that it offers. Plus, do you see yourself using these features on a regular basis if you decide to go for the Note 8? Let me know in the comments down below. Next up, Bixby, and interestingly enough, I decided to give it a chance after my terrible experience with the S8 Plus. It has definitely matured over time, and I noticed that right away after I started using voice commands to perform a few actions like calculating something, sending a message, which kind of works, and I'll talk about that in a moment, opening up recent photos, making a phone call, etc. But I thought to myself, Google Assistant does the exact same thing in a much more simplified manner, and it's a lot faster than Bixby. A good example of that would be if I want to send a message to someone on WhatsApp. Bixby literally opens the app, finds the contact, and it struggles to compose the message. So that I found to be was a little odd. It works sometimes, but in other cases, it just fails completely. Whereas with Google Assistant, it creates this unique UI and composes the message instantly, and it requests your approval. That's a lot faster than Bixby, and I prefer that. And I guess part of that has to do with the maturity of Google Assistant over the past few years, because Bixby was just recently announced with the S8 and the S8 Plus, so it's still catching up to that level, but I would much rather prefer Google Assistant, and I'm glad that we have two options on the Note 8, Google Assistant and Bixby, so ultimately you can choose your own personal voice assistant. Now recently Samsung did roll out an update where users of the Note 8 can physically disable the Bixby button, which still doesn't make any sense to me, honestly. Now there are third-party applications that can remap the Bixby button. For instance, I've downloaded this Bixby button remapper app that essentially lets you assign various functions, including the ability to launch the camera app, Google Assistant, toggle the flashlight, and much more. You just need to make sure that you've enabled the Bixby button within the Bixby settings in order for the app to take control. However, it's a little bit buggy, so I've assigned this button to toggle the vibrate mode, so when I press that, it opens the Bixby app for a second and then activates the vibrate mode. Not a big deal to be honest, but do take note of that. You also have to remember that if Samsung rolls out an update in the near future, this third-party application would turn into no good use. Performance was rock solid throughout my testing period. I've got the model with the Exynos 8895 octa-core CPU clocked at 2.3 GHz with 6 GB of RAM, and it blazed through multitasking. I guess it is an expectation to implement high-end specs on a flagship smartphone that costs $1,000. So if you need the absolute fastest Android phone on the planet, the Note 8 won't disappoint. But just be aware that Samsung smartphones have been well known to slow down over time. Now, over the course of my testing period, I haven't experienced any weird app crashes or just slowdowns in general, but that could change, so take note of that. Now, if you're an existing S8 or an S8 Plus owner, how is the performance holding up as of right now? Are you experiencing slowdowns? app crashes, weird bugs, and have you received updates over time that sort of improves the stability of the Android or the phone in general? Let me know in the comments down below. Now for storage, the Note 8 only comes in one capacity, and that's 64 gigabytes. It is expandable via microSD, so that's a positive thing, and I appreciate that because some other phones haven't implemented that feature. Google, I'm looking at you. Pixel 2 XL. What's the deal with that? Anyways, the software experience out of the box is pretty clean, albeit Samsung has preloaded their own set of apps, which some of them can be uninstalled. This could vary depending on where you get your device. If you get it through a carrier, you can certainly expect a lot more bloatware, so keep that in mind. I prefer a more cleaner and subtle look on Android, and just like every other smartphone, I was able to customize it to my liking, and I was pretty happy with the end result. The same applies to the S8 and the S8 Plus, or even any other smartphone. You can customize it to the way you like, and that's awesome. Right, Dimitri? He actually uses an iPhone, so if that's something that you were wondering. Yeah. Now, in terms of software updates, Samsung phones are typically slower to receive them, unlike Google devices. As I'm making this video, I'm currently rocking version 7.1.1 and awaiting the Oreo update. We should expect that sometime later, hopefully by the end of the year, and I guess that's one of the downsides with Samsung smartphones. They're just very late when it comes to updating the operating system, fixing bugs and whatnot. Actually, LG is the worst. My G6 is still rocking Android 7.0, so I guess within that regards, Samsung's probably a lot superior than LG, but definitely not over Google. Okay, here comes my favorite feature of the Galaxy Note 8, the cameras. And let me tell you this before I move into the results. If you're looking for a smartphone for the best camera and versatility, the Galaxy Note 8 is my best pick. I've never been this impressed with the results coming out of this smartphone, guys. Let me walk you through what exactly is going on. So the Note 8 features two 12-megapixel sensors that vary in focal length. The standard lens comes at 26mm with an f1.7 aperture, and the telephoto lens comes at 52mm with an f2.4 aperture. Both of them are optically stabilized, so it should play out really well with low-light photography and video. Speaking of which, both sensors can shoot up to 4K at 30 frames per second, 240 frames per second at 720p, and 120 frames per second in 1080. I left all the settings in auto mode with HDR turned on, and the results were absolutely stunning. There's fantastic dynamic range, and the sensor does a really good job exposing the highlights, but at the same time also maintaining the detail in the shadows. Take this picture for instance. This was taken with the telephoto lens, and it's immaculate. Here are a few more samples. Now, just like the newer iPhones, the OnePlus 5, or any other smartphone that features the portrait mode that takes advantages of dual lenses, Samsung has implemented their own live focus feature that basically takes portrait-like pictures, and it works pretty well. You'd have to maintain a certain distance to take it into full effect. Once you capture, say, a subject, you have the option to adjust the background blur with just a slider. I'm glad that it doesn't overprocess the image, plus it does a really good job isolating the edges from the background, although it can get very tricky to get with extreme low-lit conditions and even complicated objects like the shopping cart, for instance. I was unsuccessful with that, so be aware of your limitations. But honestly, for portraits, this feature works wonders. In fact, every time when you take a live focus picture, the standard lens takes a backup photo just in case, so that's much appreciated. Alright guys, so I'm in a pretty busy environment here. I'm just walking around to see how well the camera does a good job with 4K image stabilization. I'm using a wide-angle lens, so I'm going to crop in. So if I hit the X2, it's going to crop in and show you what exactly it does. So it crops in and does a pretty good job with the stabilization. I'm really impressed with what it can do. Battery life was unfortunately inconsistent for me, and I think part of that had to do with my usage. I don't have a scientific method to prove how long this would last, but for the first few weeks, I was getting roughly 5 to 5.5 hours of screen on time, but a few weeks after, I was only getting about 4 hours, and in some cases, 3.5. Not really sure why this is the case, and just to let you know, my usage involves checking Twitter, browsing the web, watching YouTube videos, and messaging. The normal drill. If you're an existing Note 8 owner, feel free to let us know your thoughts on battery life in the comments down below. Now, if you're a student or someone who's constantly traveling, you may not be satisfied with the battery life on the Note 8. And did you know that the battery capacity on the Note 8 is actually smaller than the S8 Plus? We're talking roughly 200 milliamp hours. Either way, you can always rely on backup power solutions like this Anker PowerCore 2 20,000 milliamp hour battery. It features 2 USB ports that comes with the Power IQ 2.0 technology that intelligently identifies your device to deliver the fastest possible charge. And given that the Note 8 supports Quick Charge 2.0, you can expect the same fast charging capabilities, but now without having to rely on a power outlet every time, so that's awesome. Okay, so I think it's about time to wrap up this review. The Galaxy Note 8 is Samsung's best Android smartphone as of 2017. It's basically an S8 Plus with the inclusion of S Pen and the dual cameras. I don't see any other features that seems outstanding compared to those two other phones because I was fortunate enough to test out the S8 Plus. Now, if you see yourself using the S Pen on a regular basis, and especially taking advantage of those features that I mentioned above, you should consider the Note 8. It's honestly a seamless experience just having a S Pen in hand pretty much all the time. It's literally inside the smartphone. If you need it, you can just get it out and you can start doing your thing, which is great. The dual cameras are absolutely fantastic. I don't think there are any other smartphones as of right now that could compete with the Note 8. Perhaps the Pixel 2 XL could give the Note 8 a run for its money. I never know. I actually pre-ordered mine, so I'm still waiting for that to get here in the studio. So hopefully I'll be able to do a comparison between the cameras sometime in the near future. But if you're actually interested in a quick comparison between those two devices, you can check it out right over here. I quickly go over the specs, the pros and the cons of both devices. Let's be honest here for a second. There's no such thing as a perfect smartphone. With the Galaxy Note 8, some of the quirks are obviously the design. This is my personal opinion. I don't like an all glass back. The fingerprint sensor location is absolutely horrible, just like the S8 Plus. The software is alright. I wish it was running Google's stock Android, but that's I can only ask for so much. And hopefully, they'll update it over time. Perhaps this performance would actually stay up to date probably for the next couple of years because this is an expensive investment. You want to invest in a smartphone that will last you for a relatively long time. And hopefully we won't experience that with the Note 8, especially with the slowdowns that we've experienced with previous Samsung devices. With that being said, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Samsung Galaxy Note 8. What do you guys think of this device? Is it really worth $1,000? Are you willing to spend that amount of money for an all-rounder smartphone given the quirks that you have to work around with? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm Eber with Canucks. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more similar content, and we'll see you in the next one.